Hello and welcome back to this damnful idealistic crusade. In this video, I'll be going over everything I picked up in the recent Indicator sale on the Powerhouse Film Store website, which is done twice a year, usually around April and October. And for those of us in the US, it's the best time to stock up on all of the wonderful British labels titles. Even though they're now operating in the US with certain releases, they still are primarily a UK label, and stocking up in one of their sales is the best time as a US fan of the label to get as many titles as possible. Their free shipping threshold for international shipping is a bit high, but given that so many titles are available at such a discount, you can actually build a substantial collection with a single order just to get free shipping. So admittedly, I usually try and wait for one of the sales to stock up on titles, as not only is it a substantial savings for both standard editions and limited editions plus the box sets, but also a lot of the limited editions and box sets do go out of print during the sale, as they're usually flooded with orders. That also means it does take a bit longer for orders to be processed and for your order to get to you, which is understandable. So I did just finally get my order from the sale. However, since I wasn't able to participate in some of the last sales and there were many titles I wanted to catch up on, and I decided to wait for this sale and skip other sales and sort of save my money. And admittedly, there was a feeling of at least trying not to panic buy everything because physical media is going to be dramatically affected by the ongoing trade issues being felt around the world, given that not only is this, of course, a UK label and they'd have to be import titles, but also, all the aspects of physical media, from cases to discs themselves, are made in other countries. So it's going to become a lot more expensive, unfortunately, it seems, for us physical media collectors, especially in getting import titles. So admittedly, there was that sort of factor at the back of my mind the whole time as I was continually fiddling around with my cart. It was an exceptionally large cart to begin with, so I did a lot of putting things back, putting them back in my cart, and going back and forth, and what you usually do in most of the sales. But given that they had an exceptionally large 4 for $20 section this time, which was not only standard editions but even some limited editions as well, meant that I probably got more than I should have, and I definitely splurged a bit. But when you actually think about spending a couple $100s in one of these sales, especially for titles that have to be imported in the first place, and with even the standard editions usually selling at import retailers for anywhere between $15 and $25 each, and especially a lot of these are limited editions, which are usually even more than that, factoring out that some of these only cost about $5.30 each for a boutique label Indicator title, even as a standard edition, is absurdly cheap. So there is that as well, thinking about the overall value for money. But I did go a little bit crazy, admittedly, in this order. But again, I did try and at least rationalize that things were very cheap overall, and I skipped other sales to focus on this one. So when 2 boxes showed up on my doorstep, I tried to not feel so bad about myself. As you can see, I may have overdone it a little bit, but Indicator does package all of their shipping boxes extraordinarily well. So it's not like these are filled to the brim with just discs. They've got tons of bubble wrap and packaging material inside to insulate everything, but also these are pretty much 2 fully stuffed boxes. So admittedly, I did go a little bit overboard. To quote Tom Jones from the iconic closing song of the Pink Panther Strikes Again, "Come to me." As I said before, these are absolutely loaded with packaging materials, so endless bits of bubble wrap and the wonderful air cushions. And then nicely, they always wrap your titles you've picked out. They break them up into these little bundles and then cover them with a ton of bubble wrap, basically making these super protected little bricks. Box number 2. So to start, I'll go through all the standard editions I picked up in the 4 for $20 sale. Typically, this can be some of the best bargains in the sale overall, as you're able to get indicator titles, even though they're the standard editions, for well under $10 US, and these, when you average them out, were all about $5.30 each, which for a fully loaded, fantastic boutique Blu-ray, especially an indicator title, is nothing. So I splurged a lot. First are some titles I picked up for a specific unified reason. The first three I picked up because they were some of the horror titles starring or featuring Peter Cushing that I hadn't picked up. So I got the standard edition of Torture Garden, the 1967 Amicus anthology film directed by Freddie Francis, and I've just been meaning to pick this up as it's one of the Peter Cushing vehicles or starring or featuring films, and one of the horror films I hadn't picked up from them. And as usual, this is loaded with incredible supplements, and so it's just been one of the many titles I've almost gotten in previous sales, and I figured I might as well go ahead and get it while the standard edition was so inexpensive. So I also picked up 1968's Corruption, which was originally a boxed limited edition that sold out, but the standard edition is the same disc, which is really important because this was a complete restoration by Indicator at 2K with multiple versions of the film, and is, as you can see, absolutely loaded with supplements. So this is one of the films I've never seen before, but I've been really enticed by the Indicator presentation, and it's a new restoration of multiple versions, and it's an absolutely stuffed disc in terms of supplements. So this is just me chipping away at all of the Peter Cushing films the label has done. The same thing goes for the 1976 The Devil's Men, also with Donald Pleasance. This, again, is the standard edition of the out-of-print limited version, but this also has a new Indicator restoration at 2K with multiple versions of the film with different runtimes and a nice selection of supplements. So that's why I decided I was going to go ahead and get all three of the Peter Cushing starring or featuring films that Indicator has done that I didn't have. I pretty much have all the rest. So it was pretty much a matter of, well, if I'm going to get one, I might as well get the other two as well. I also picked up two lesser-known films starring or featuring Gene Hackman, whose filmography I think we're all really digging back into, and I'm sure these sold quite well during the sale. The first is Lilith from 1964, directed by Robert Rossen. This was Hackman's real breakthrough in terms of films, even though he's only in it for a very short time, and this is where he really met and became friends with Warren Beatty, and why Beatty brought him on to Bonnie and Clyde, which was his major film breakthrough. But he's phenomenal in the small parts of the film he's in, and this already had a really solid Sony master on the Mill Creek Blu-ray, but this Indicator version vaults ahead with beautiful original poster artwork, of course, a better overall presentation, and a nice amount of supplements. So this is one of the titles I've been meaning to upgrade for some time, because while I have basically the same master on the Mill Creek double feature disc, the Indicator version is the one to go for, and I've been wanting to revisit this film as I'm going through Hackman's filmography. So I also grabbed 1971's Cisco Pike in the standard edition, starring Chris Christopherson and Gene Hackman. This is a film I've always had on my watch list, never gotten to see, and almost gotten in past sales, so I went ahead and grabbed the standard edition. And what's great about all the standard versions is, of course, it's the same disc as the limited version, so you still get the same incredible transfer work and encoding and fantastic supplements, and, of course, great artwork, but you're just missing out on the limited booklet. But, again, these were so absurdly cheap in the sale that's why I decided to stock up on as many as I could technically afford at the time. Going through the rest of the standard releases chronologically, we have 1955's Footsteps in the Fog, which was directed by Arthur Lubin, who directed a number of the 1940s Universal horror films, in addition to musicals and other things. And this has just always intrigued me when I've seen it on the Indicator site. It's a film I've never gotten to see, but I really enjoy more obscure 1950s British crime thrillers, crime dramas, and also period set films. And I'm very curious to see what Lubin directing this in the mid-50s is like, and comparing it to the films he did at Universal in the 40s, which had some similar aesthetics. So, and just like everything else, this is also loaded with wonderful supplements too. In a similar vein, I picked up 1957's Town on Trial, directed by John Gillerman, who I think is a very underrated director, and I'm trying to see more of his filmography. This is also a lovely extras package and an overall nice looking release, so this has just been another that I've almost bought many times in the past. This next one is one that is the best release of the film to date in terms of all the other releases of the film on DVD and Blu-ray, and it is a classic in its own right, so it's one that I've just been meaning to pick up, so I finally grabbed it. And that's, of course, Suddenly Last Summer, directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, based on the Tennessee Williams play, and using beautiful original artwork. So again, this is just the most comprehensive and most extras packed and best presentation of the film to date. And this, of course, is the standard release, as I missed the limited version, but this is just one of the classic titles I've been meaning to pick up for ages. I also picked up Psyche 59 from 1964, which by its description sounded like a fascinating blend of sort of romantic thriller with a great deal of sexual themes, which seems quite daring for the time, and I think that's why Indicator chose to highlight this title. It's also got a fantastic amount of supplements, and it's just one of those films that I had sort of seen referenced before, maybe once or twice, or sort of knew that the title existed, but a film that wasn't really on my radar. So it was another of these that just looked too enticing. Another I've been meaning to pick up and finally grab this time is the 1965 Otto Preminger film Bunny Lake is Missing, which is the product of a brand new 4K restoration that was done for this release. And this, of course, has great original poster artwork. There are a nice amount of supplements, and of course, while I wish I'd gotten the limited version, this is just one of the standard editions I've been kicking myself I hadn't gotten yet. Next is the 1968 film Secret Ceremony, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Robert Mitchum, and of course directed by Joseph Losey. This is another I've been meaning to pick up for ages, especially as I'm a Mitchum completist, and I really love the usage of original art. There's also a nice amount of supplements, so this is just another to finally check off my never-ending all the Indicator titles I want list. Now, I'm not really one for musicals, but I've been wanting to check out this release for some time, as it has multiple versions of the film, multiple different soundtrack presentations, and was originally a big limited edition hard case box, but the standard edition has the same incredible disc contents, and it's all jammed onto a single release, and that, of course, is Sweet Charity from 1969, directed by Bob Fosse. And again, this is a beautiful release in terms of just how stuffed it is. It was a brand new 4K restoration. There are 3 versions of the film with 2 soundtrack options in terms of the presentations and a substantial amount of supplements, and they've all seemingly gotten it onto one disc. So this is one of the most jam-packed releases that's being sold as a standard edition. So if you were getting this in the sale, you're getting a heck of a lot for your, less than $5.50 if you're buying multiples. So that's why I finally decided that it was about time that I checked out this release, because I've been meaning to, and the presentations and supplements are extensive. Another I've been meaning to pick up for some time, and a film that I saw when I was very young and always kind of stuck with me in a way, is The Mind of Mr. Soames from 1970, which is a really striking blend of basically real life psychology getting into the horror film, and it's a very simple concept, but it's got a certain poetic eeriness to it, and Terence Stamp really goes for broke in terms of trying to portray a character who is essentially not part of the civilized world, as he is essentially a character who is a child in a grown man's form, and thus cannot fully cope with the world around him and lives within himself. It's again a very striking film, a film that maybe not is the most successful at what it's trying to achieve, but one that's always kind of stuck with me in a way. So I've been meaning to get to the Indicator release, which has a really nice amount of supplements and is now here in the standard edition. From 1971, I picked up Gumshoe, which is very early for director Stephen Frears and stars Albert Finney. It's a film I've always wanted to see, and another title I've almost gotten many times before, but I was just enticed by seeing those two names sort of playing around in classic noir tropes. And just having Albert Finney on the cover with the traditional private eye trench coat and fedora and smoking pistol sort of traditional armor of the private eye in terms of classic noir imagery and hard-boiled fiction, that just got my money right then and there. This is an HD master with a substantial amount of supplements, so it's just another indicator title I've been meaning to get for ages. Next, I picked up 1972's Endless Night, which is a Agatha Christie adaptation, one I've been meaning to see for quite some time. But it's also got a Bernard Herrmann score. So this was extra enticing also for the fact that it is a 4K scan. So it's a new master, new restoration presentation, but it's from a 4K scan source. That's always something I try to look for in these sales and at least try to focus somewhat on the titles that do have a new restoration or are from a new 2K or 4K scan, as opposed to releases that are just coming from a pre-existing HD master from some time in the past. That's always a little distinction you can use if you're like me and you're trying to whittle down your massive cards. It's sometimes helpful to just try and focus on the titles that have new restorations or newer masters. But as you can see, this also has substantial supplements, and I really do enjoy trying to find the really great Agatha Christie film adaptations. So this has just been one that's been on my list for a long time. Next is another film I've always wanted to see, which is 1972's Young Winston, starring Robert Shaw, and of course written and produced by Carl Foreman, directed by Richard Attenborough. It's a film I've read a lot about, and I've seen even some vintage interviews of Shaw discussing it, but when Indicator did their release, it immediately went on my radar, and I've been meaning to pick it up ever since. There are substantial supplements to this release, so if you're a Robert Shaw fan, that makes this really a no-brainer. Plus, I do have great admiration for both Attenborough and especially Carl Foreman, who I think is quite underrated, so this is just one of those films that's been on my radar. I've been meaning to get this released, and I've been really wanting to see it, so it was in the sale, and this was one of the first I put in my cart. Next is 1975's The Fortune with Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson, a Mike Nichols picture that was not the most successful when it came out, and so it has a certain reputation to it, but I've been wanting to revisit it because I saw it once a very long time ago, and it's an attempt to sort of have a darkly funny, very sort of screwball comedy energy in a 1970s film with, three of the biggest names of 70s cinema. So I've really been wanting to revisit this, and the Indicator release is the best version as it has a number of really nice supplements. Next, I picked up the 1976 Martin Ritt film, The Front, which is, of course, about the HUAC days of the 1950s, really striking original artwork on the front. And it's also the product of a 4K restoration with a nice amount of supplements. So this is one of the titles I've had on my list for way too long and saw it was included in the 4 for 20. So immediately it went in my cart, and you get the bonus of it being one of the titles that's from a 4K restoration. I also picked up 1982's The Border, starring Jack Nicholson, made by Tony Richardson. This is an earlier Indicator title that I've almost gotten multiple times. It's the standard release, but still has a really nice supplements package. There are, of course, releases in the US, but overall, as with pretty much all Indicator releases that have been released by others here in the States, the Indicator version is the best overall and the one to go for. I also picked up 1987's Gardens of Stone, which is a later Coppola film, and one that's actually, I remember as being quite good and very striking, but I haven't seen it for a great number of years. There's a nice amount of supplements, and this is easily the best presentation the film has on physical media. So if you're a big Coppola fan, or you're curious to look at his later, lesser discussed films, or if you're a Coppola completist, then this is really a no-brainer. And then last, for the standard editions in the 4 for 20 sale, I picked up the Paul Schrader film Light Sleeper, which has been very obscure and only had very limited physical media releases before this point. I, for example, have the old Laserdisc that I found, which is itself not common and doesn't have the original theatrical aspect ratio. So the film getting an Indicator release with at the very least, a solid HD master in the correct ratio, properly encoded with a really nice amount of supplements, is something to celebrate. And I think that's why the limited edition sold out extraordinarily quickly. This is a more recent release where the limited version sold out very fast. So I was finally able to at least get the standard version because I've been wanting to watch this film. And while I have it on Laserdisc, I don't really enjoy watching films that are supposed to be at the very least 1.85 or a matted spherical presentation on LD opened up when the framing isn't all that great. So I've been just holding out to where I could get this, and then of course then compare it to the LD I have. Next are the limited editions I picked up that were actually included in the 4 for 20 sale. These are really the highlights of the sale every year, I think, because Indicator will include a number of limited editions that haven't sold out yet, and so you can get not only standard editions, but limited editions for absurdly cheap. But these will also be the things that sell out first. And a number of them did, and thus they will have to then transition over to being standard editions. And so that's why I think these are the first things to look for. And if you have a number of these you're interested in, that's why it's best to place an order sooner rather than later. I myself even missed out on a few of these as they sold out so fast, as the deal on the limited editions that are included is incredible. Plus, you can take a chance on a film that you maybe haven't seen yet or haven't really heard of before that seems interesting because it's a full limited edition that's marked down to, $5.30 some odd cents, which is crazy to think. So I did pick up some I'd been meaning to get, and then also some that I grabbed merely because they were limited editions priced down that cheap and thus about to then be out of print. So first I picked up 1940s Pastor Hall, which I've been fascinated to look at. This is from a 4K restoration and scan by Indicator themselves and has an incredible supplements package. And of course, this is the limited version with incredible booklet as well. Now, this is one of the titles they are also selling in the US market, so you are able to actually purchase it directly here in the States. But seeing this included in the 4 for 20 sale meant I immediately jumped on it. Next is 1957's The Strange One, produced by Sam Spiegel and starring Ben Gazzara. This is a film I've always seen and kind of read a little bit about, but never gotten to see, so I decided I would take a chance on it, especially since I can't resist a lovely Indicator limited edition release with full booklet and nice supplements. Next is 1970's Connecting Rooms with Bette Davis and Michael Redgrave, and this is a really stuffed, lovely edition that is also the product of a 4K restoration, and as you can see, the supplements are exhaustive, so I can't wait to dive into this, and it was another amazing limited edition that was included in the 4 for 20 sale. This next film I've read about and heard about, but never gotten to see, and it was also marked down in the sale, so I picked up Diary of a Mad Housewife from 1970, which is really a lovely looking release in terms of the original artwork they went with. And it's also very important because it includes not only the theatrical version of the film, but an alternate TV cut with different footage and edits, plus a substantial amount of supplements. So not only is this a film I've always wanted to check out and I think looks fascinating, but it's also another obscure gem that Indicator has given the royal treatment to, and it was amazingly included in the 4 for 20 sale. And then last for these is An Unsuitable Job for a Woman from 1982, which sounded fascinating, so I'd always wanted to check it out. I'm just seeing it on the Indicator website. But this is yet another 4K scan and restoration, also carried out by Powerhouse Films, so Indicator themselves, with a really nice looking extras package. And so this being included in the 4 for 20 sale and already at low quantities meant that I jumped all over this too. So I think most of these limited editions that appeared in the 4 for 20 section did get close to or did actually sell out. And again, there were some others that I missed out on. So that's why I think these are the most important things to look at every time Indicator does a sale. They won't typically do a lot of the limited editions mixed in the sort of bargain sale, but they will usually have a number that hadn't sold out. And so once you see those are typically going to be the things that sell out first. Next are the other limited editions I picked up at the sale price that they were running. And I used this opportunity to stock up on the limited editions that I hadn't picked up yet from the past 2 to 3 years that I'd been, kicking myself I hadn't gotten yet. And of course, my primary focus being on the incredible releases they do of classic Hollywood films. So to go through these chronologically, first I picked up 1929's Thunderbolt, directed by the legendary Joseph von Sternberg, in the beautiful looking limited edition with original artwork and just a fantastic looking release with a great amount of extras, and of course, again, the fantastic booklet. Also directed by Sternberg is 1931's An American Tragedy, starring Phillips Holmes, who I've become a bigger fan of due to his great performance and the Howard Hawks film The Criminal Code, which also has a great indicator Blu-ray. This has beautiful original artwork and is the product of a 4K restoration done in 2019, and has a substantial amount of supplements plus the usual incredible indicator artwork and booklet. Next is 1931's Honor Among Lovers, directed by the great Dorothy Arzner, with a fantastic cast of Claudette Colbert, Frederick March, Ginger Rogers, and Charlie Ruggles as well. Beautiful original artwork. And it's also from a 2017 4K restoration, plus has a fantastic amount of supplements and, of course, the indicator booklet. Next is 1932's Love Me Tonight, which, of course, is directed by the great Ruben Mamoulian. This is also from a modern 4K restoration with a beautiful amount of supplements and great booklet. This was another must for me, being a big fan of Mamoulian and being a Myrna Loy completist. So I also had to get 1933's The Song of Songs, produced and directed by Mamoulian, and of course featuring beautiful artwork showing that this is a Marlene Dietrich vehicle, and also has a beautiful amount of supplements and, of course, the indicator booklet as well. Next is 1936's Desire with Dietrich and Gary Cooper, but of course this was produced by Ernst Lubitsch and directed by the great Frank Borzage. This is also the product of a modern 4K scan and restoration and has a fantastic amount of supplements in addition to the indicator booklet. Next is 1938's You and Me, which is classic Fritz Lang with beautiful original artwork, pairing George Raff with Sylvia Sidney and really sort of fitting into a sort of unofficial trilogy of sorts of Sylvia Sidney starring Fritz Lang films of this period that started with the classic Fury and then, of course, also continued in You Only Live Once. This was released by Kino Lorber with a nice commentary, but the indicator version, I think, is the superior package overall, as it has a substantial amount of additional supplements, beautiful original artwork, and is coming from the same 2K restoration. So this, I think, is the superior version of the two, and another Kino disc that I'm upgrading to an indicator version. And of course, the limited edition has the incredible booklet as well. I also picked up 1939's When Tomorrow Comes, produced and directed by John M. Stahl and adapting James M. Cain, who is one of my favorite authors, so I've really been wanting to look at the indicator limited edition because it's coming from a 2K restoration and has a substantial amount of supplements, including looking at Cain's reaction to the adaptation of his work. I picked up 1941's You'll Never Get Rich, which pairs Fred Astaire with Rita Hayworth in a sort of change of pace from the iconic Astaire and Ginger Rogers musicals. This has really beautiful artwork and is from a 4K restoration, so that made it a no-brainer to pick up, in addition to this release having the usual fantastic amount of indicator supplements and great booklet. Next is 1942's The Lady Is Willing with Dietrich and Fred McMurray, directed by Mitchell Leisen. So this makes a nice companion to the indicator release of the classic Remember the Night, and a film that I've really been wanting to revisit since looking at that film again. This also has a fantastic amount of supplements in addition to booklet and great artwork. Next is 1942's Tomorrow We Live, which is a film I'd never really heard much about before, but looked fascinating. And it's another that Indicator themselves did a 4K restoration of. So this is one of the films they've sort of plucked out of obscurity and given the full restoration and red carpet supplements treatment to. As you can see, this is absolutely loaded. And I'm a sucker for great historical war films or wartime dramas, especially ones that are more on the obscure side. So I really wanted to check this out, so I picked it up in the sale. The same thing goes for the next film, which is also from director George King, The Shop at Sly Corner from 1947. This is a film I hadn't really heard of before, but also seemed fascinating, and is another that Indicator has restored in 4K themselves, and also has a great amount of supplements. So I figured I would get both of them, as they had the same director and both were scanned at 4K by Powerhouse Films. Another title that Powerhouse Films has given a 4K restoration is 1949's Obsession, and I've always wanted to see this film, as it's one of the films that the blacklisted director Edward Dmytryk made while he was forced to work in the UK. I think Dmytryk is an incredibly underrated director and made some of the best noir and crime films of the classic period, but this also has beautiful original artwork and a great amount of supplements, but again is also a 4K restoration done by Powerhouse Films. So all of this together, and it being a Dmytryk film I've always wanted to see, meant that I had to get this. Now, on the flip side of that thematically is Jet Pilot, of course credited to being released in 1957 and directed by Joseph von Sternberg, but this film was famously produced and made by Howard Hughes, who couldn't stop tweaking it, and so it was ultimately released years after it was actually produced, and exists in two different ratios due to that. So the Indicator release includes both the matted widescreen and the Academy ratio version, so you're getting two presentations of the film, plus a substantial amount of extras, and the best release of the film to date. Next is the 1958 murder mystery The Whole Truth, directed by John Guillermin. As I said before, I'm trying to see more of Guillermin's films, and I love murder mysteries, especially with star-studded casts, and so this was another that just looked too appealing for words. Plus, you're getting the full limited edition treatment with booklet, great artwork, and fantastic supplements. Another I've been meaning to pick up for some time is 1968's Night of the Following Day with Marlon Brando and the forever underrated Richard Boone. This has the incredible original poster artwork on the sort of bold red-orange background, and is a film that I've seen a long, long time ago, but I've been waiting until I got the lovely Indicator release to check it out again. This, of course, is the limited edition with fantastic supplements and great booklet. Next is 1969's The Death of a Gunfighter, which is important as it's technically a Don Siegel film, but due to various disagreements, he had his name taken off, and this has the infamous credit of directed by Alan Smithee, the director who doesn't actually exist, and this name became used time and time again on troubled productions where the director wanted their name taken off for various reasons. So the Alan Smithee credit has a level of notoriety to it, and this film also being technically Don Siegel at the same time means it's doubly important, as Siegel's one of the great American directors of his era and forever underrated, and a great Western director. So this has a beautiful amount of supplements in addition to the HD remaster, and is really getting into the nitty-gritty of the story behind the development of the Smithee credit being applied to this. So I've really been wanting to check this out, and I'm also a big fan of Don Siegel. Next is the 1971 classic They Might Be Giants, starring George C. Scott and Joanne Woodward, and also featuring a lovely John Barry score. This is a really interesting film that sort of defies genre classification, and one I've really been wanting to revisit, so I've waited until I could get the Indicator release, which vaults ahead of other Blu-ray releases in terms of the substantial amount of supplements, and including two versions of the film. Next is 1973's Impossible Object, directed by the great John Frankenheimer, who's one of my favorite directors, so this was a must for me to pick up as I'm a Frankenheimer completist. This is a film that's not often discussed, but Indicator went all out in terms of the supplements and including multiple presentations of the film in terms of two different cuts, and this is from a 4K restoration, as you can see. So this is definitely one of the more stuffed limited editions that I picked up in the sale, and of course it's a Frankenheimer film, so I had to get it. And then last is 1998's Jenna, starring Christopher Lee, and featuring one of his performances that he was most proud of in his career. So I've always wanted to see this, but just never gotten around to it, and I was surprised that Indicator did a full deluxe special limited edition. This, of course, is an HD master, but given the full Indicator treatment with great supplements, great artwork, and of course full booklet. And last but certainly not least, I picked up one box set, which is Colombian Noir Volume 6, featuring the 8 films in the Whistler series of B films that are really striking little atmospheric crime thrillers that Sony had released on DVD finally as MOD titles. But this was a real surprise announcement and amazing to continue the Colombian Noir series, which I think is one of the best series of home video releases in all of physical media due to just how incredible they are with the beautiful packaging, artwork, attention to detail, and incredible exhaustive supplements. Now, this, of course, is a series of B films with short runtimes, but they really have some striking and unique elements. The only issue here is that Indicator was forced to use a standard definition master of one of the films as no new scan or HD master existed. So when you're watching through, there will be one film that unfortunately is standard definition only, but that's really just how it was in the cards. And I guess for whatever reason, Sony hadn't made a master, or elements didn't exist, or it wasn't in the budget. But we finally do have a great presentation and continuation of the Colombian Noir series with one of the most atmospheric and most underrated of B film series from the classic Hollywood days. And then, as usual, Indicator did include a little packet insert, this featuring the lovely artwork from their Pryor and Wilder set. And then you open to find a little catalog of the limited and standard editions, and then some more advertisements on the back. But these are always so nicely printed that they make nice little display pieces or things to have on your shelf. So they're not just little throwaways. They're really nicely done, and eventually if you make a lot of orders, then you have a nice little stack of Indicator inserts and cards and little bits of art that you can use or just have as display pieces. So there you have it, me going overboard in the Indicator sale and purchasing more than I originally intended, but at an absurd level of discount overall when you think about it. And then when you actually break down the cost per disc or the cost per film, and you look at the substantial amount of supplements on each release, that means each title is a complete deep dive into the world of a film and its production and its cast and crew. And you'll be able to spend hours upon hours going through the supplements, listening to the commentaries, reading the booklet, poring over the artwork. So for your money, you're getting not just the film experience, but the complete reference work about the film. Every Indicator release is essentially a journey into a film, no matter how obscure it may be. So it's not just your typical sort of boutique label release. You're getting a whole secondary experience after the film. So your money definitely goes extraordinarily far in terms of the amount of time you get to experience the film and think about it further afterwards, and going through all the incredible supplements. So while at first it's definitely a bit daunting spending enough to get the free international shipping, when you think about the overall value for money, it is incredible. And especially with so many titles that were only going for about $5.30 each in terms of doing currency conversion, doing the 4 for 20 sale, and some of them including really stuffed releases in terms of extras and additional presentations and the limited editions. So if you're willing to wait and stock up during one of these sales, it's definitely the best time to do so, even if you're having to go for that admittedly higher international shipping free threshold. So as always, I hope my babbles about the world of physical media and collecting the Indicator label has been at least somewhat fun and informative. Again, this is far more than I typically spend or purchase in a sale, but I had missed out on past sales, and I also decided I was going to wait and save up this year and skip other sales to focus on Indicator. And then with the current ongoing global trade situation, it's difficult to know if the sales will come around the next time and be as affordable. So I did purchase more than I was going to originally because the prices were so cheap. And I also wondered, is the next sale going to be greatly affected by the ongoing trade issues? So I thought it was probably a better idea to go ahead and purchase a bit more this time. And with so many titles being in the 4 for 20 sale, being about $5 each, that meant I just couldn't stop myself. So there was a lot of back and forth with my cart. But also, Indicator is my favorite of the boutique labels due to their continued efforts and doing the absolute best work they can with each and every title and producing incredible packages with great artwork, great booklets, and phenomenal supplements. They are really unmatched in terms of the level of care and incredible amounts of material they have in each of their supplemental features packages. So again, with each title, you're not just getting a great version of the film, you're getting a whole secondary experience. So, your money is going far further than it would on just a standard bare bones boutique label release. So for all those reasons, I could justify spending a lot more than I usually do, but still in the long run, not terribly much considering the vast amount of films I was able to pick up and just thinking about how long it's going to take me to go through all of these and go through all the extras. And plus I was finally able to chip away at a lot of things that had been on my wish list. So as we're all getting our packages from the sale in, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about maybe what you've picked up in the sale or what you're looking forward to maybe in the next sale, which usually happens around October. And of course, again, I like to highlight these because I think it's the best opportunity to pick up Indicator titles when you're a collector here in the US, and especially if you're a big fan of the label, this is really the best time twice a year to just grab everything you've been meaning to and mix in some interesting looking titles that are on sale and maybe also some films you want to give a try that maybe you've never heard of before. This is really the time to do so. So as always, please do keep supporting both studios and boutique labels by buying films on disc in order to help keep both physical media and film culture itself alive. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.